Lovely. Wow, aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a woman in 1531 plumping her cushions? And no, that is not a euphemism. Quite fascinating. Hello there, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. When I was digging out that original recording from the British Library, I suddenly realised that maybe I'd played that recording before, but I don't think I have. But if I have, I'm so sorry. It's quite hard to find these original recordings, and there's a massive archive of them, and I sometimes don't know whether I've played one before. So sorry if I have, but it's a good one. Plumping cushions. I also had another thought before we start today, and it was this whole discourse around, was Shakespeare real? Was he the writer of Shakespeare's plays as we know them now? Or was it indeed someone else? I think there's a bloke called Bacon has been bandied about. Some people think that it was a woman who wrote the plays and poems. Some people thought that it was a group of people, multi-people, multi-writers. And I thought it might be quite fun to do a little episode with a guest where we just talk about the sort of theories behind other people having written these great bits of work. I mean, for the moment, I'm pretty safely in the camp of this bloke called William Shakespeare wrote these works that say that they were written by William Shakespeare, just because that to me makes the most sense, but also happy to be proved wrong / look into the other theories. What do you think? Do you fancy that? Right, with that aside, we're looking at Sonnet 81 today. Let's take a listen, shall we? Or I shall live, your epitaph to make, or you survive when I in earth am rotten. From hence your memory death cannot take, although in me each part will be forgotten. Your name from hence immortal life shall have, though I, once gone, to all the world must die. The earth can yield me but a common grave, when you entombed in men's eyes shall lie. Your monument shall be my gentle verse, which eyes not yet created shall o'er read, and tongues to be your being shall rehearse, when all the breathers of this world are dead. You still shall live. Such virtue hath my pen, where breath most breathes, even in the mouths of men. So there it is, Sonnet 81. And I think it's you know what, that last final couplet, got to be one of the best, doesn't it? I love when it just, when it rhymes, plain and simple. I know they're all kind of meant to rhyme, but this one really just is a zinger. And I like also, even though I don't think it's the most amazing topic of conversation that he's sparked in his sonnets so far, I like how he uses the I'm like this, you're like this, the sort of comparisons again, which he's done in a fair few of them so far, hasn't he? And once again, we have the old topic of Shakespeare being full of himself. Again. And it's sort of in this way that he's like, I'm going to be nothing when I die, but my writing's so bloody good, everyone's going to remember you. Which again is him sort of going, look, I'm nothing, I'm pathetic, you're amazing, but also deep down he's thinking, yeah, but my writing is so amazing, people will remember me. But he's not going to say that in the poem because that's not very sexy, is it? Anyway, I think it's about time we dive into this line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about in Sonnet 81. So we start with, or I shall live, your epitaph to make, or you survive when I in earth am rotten. Oh, I don't like it when he starts with or. I know that was That was a thing that poets did back in the day, but it just gives me the heebie-jeebies when you start a poem with or. But really what he's saying here is, he's saying either, but he's using or twice, I think. So he's saying either I will live to write your epitaph after you die, or you will outlive me when I'm rotting in the earth. So those are the two situations that we have. Then he continues, from hence your memory death cannot take, although in me each part will be forgotten. So he's saying death cannot take away your memory, but my memory, everyone's going to forget about me, basically. Little old me, little old Shakespeare, don't mind me, everyone's going to forget. But you, woohoo, everyone will remember you forever, because you're so bloody amazing. Your name from hence immortal life shall have, though I, once gone, to all the world must die. So he's continuing along the same theme here. He's saying your name will live on for eternity, but once I'm dead, I'll be dead to the world. So really exactly the same as what he said in lines 3 and 4, just sort of rephrased, which he likes to do. Really plough that theme home. The earth can yield me but a common grave, when you entombed in men's eyes shall lie. So here it's the same theme really. He's saying, I'll be granted just a little old, pathetic, normal grave for ordinary people, but you'll be given this unbelievable tomb where everyone can see it. Got to be one hell of a tomb for everyone to see it, but I think I know what he means. You know when you go into a graveyard and you see one ginormous tomb and you think, who's that? Who's under that? And it's always some big name, Karl Marx, someone like that. Anyway, that's what he's saying his lover will be. Your monument shall be my gentle verse, which eyes not yet created shall o'erread, and tongues to be your being shall rehearse, when all the breathers of this world are dead. Now that's quite a few lines there, but it's all one thought really, and this is where Shakespeare is saying, your monument will actually be my lovely poems, which generations to come will read and talk about. When everyone now, living right now, will be dead, these people, we're talking 100, we're talking 200, we're talking 500 years, will be reading these poems that I am writing now about you. Isn't that amazing? So that'll be your monument, mate. So again, we've sort of come on to the faux humble Shakespeare thing where he's like, you're so amazing and everyone's going to remember you for being incredible, but just to say they will remember you through my writing. So think about that. And if I was reading this as the lovely recipient of the poem, I would be a bit like, well, I know it's nice that you say I'm amazing, but all I'm thinking about is your poetry being so successful in 200, 300 years. And that's lovely for you, so I don't know what you're moaning about, saying that everyone's going to forget you. Your name's going to be on the front of the bloody book. And now we're on to the final couplet. You still shall live, such virtue hath my pen, where breath most breathes, even in the mouths of men. So as the final couplet is wont to do, he is sort of summing up what he's been saying in the poem. And that is, my poetry is so bloody powerful, is so amazing, that you shall live on. And not only that, you shall live on where life is most potent and stories are told, and that is in the mouths of men. Would have been nice for him to say in the mouths of humans, not to gender it so much. But I think we can assume that he means men and women, hopefully. But I can't speak for Shakespeare. And you know what? He can't speak for himself because he's long dead. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I love that he just had to put in that little addition in the final couplet where he says, "You shall live," and then it says, "Such virtue hath my pen." Just little pop that in there. "You shall live because my writing's so bloody good." You know what? The confidence that he has here to say that is just fantastic. I think we need a bit more of that in this day and age. Just saying, you know what? I'm great. My writing's fantastic. Just believe in yourself a bit more. So there we have it, Sonnet 81, expertly and deftly dissected. And now I think it's about time we put this to our story. If you remember last week, or maybe you don't because you've forgotten instantly, or you weren't here last week, Shakespeare has found himself in a sort of weird love triangle where Christopher Marlowe and Ben Jonson are sort of in love with each other, but Shakespeare is trying to win back Christopher Marlowe. And so he's gone round to Ben Jonson's house at night, in the dead of night, and he's climbed up the outside of his building and into his bedroom, where Ben Jonson is sleeping in bed with Christopher Marlowe, and Shakespeare's crawled across the floor and read to him Sonnet 80 in a hushed whisper. And the Sonnet 80 was all about Shakespeare sort of realising that other writers, aka Ben Jonson, were writing about Christopher Marlowe, his muse. And he was basically saying, look, I know these other writers are better than me, but this is me, all right? And this is how much I love you. And I'm but a small sailing ship on your vast ocean, and this other poet is a massive vessel, but I am risking everything to be with you. So let's see how that was received by Christopher Marlowe, and how Sonnet 81 fits into all this. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 80 to Christopher Marlowe in a hushed whisper. He is still, in fact, on his hands and knees, right by Christopher Marlowe's face. Christopher Marlowe says, "Shakespeare, that's fantastic. I guess when you put it like that, the boat analogy and everything, when you say you're a little ship and he's a big vessel, it really, it brings a tear to my eye because you know how much I love boats. All right, thank you, Shakespeare. I guess I haven't heard love talked about in a way that I can understand, like with little boats and big boats and stuff like that. So, it's fantastic." And he looks over at Ben Jonson lying peacefully next to him, still asleep. "Shakespeare, I don't know if I can do this. I think I still love Ben Jonson." And Shakespeare says, "Hey, listen. Meet me tomorrow in the graveyard. You know, the graveyard in London. The big one where everyone goes. Meet me there at midnight and bring a lantern. It'll be dark." And Christopher Marlowe says, "A graveyard? That doesn't sound like a very nice date." And Shakespeare says, "It'll all become clear when I see you there. Until then, goodbye." And with that, he slowly crawls out of the bedroom. Christopher Marlowe watches him as he ungainly clambers out of the window and back down the side of the house. He slips and falls and lands in some hedgerow. Christopher Marlowe clambers out of bed, looks out of the window and calls down, "Shakespeare, is everything okay?" And Shakespeare says, "Yep, not a problem, just lost my footing. All good, see you tomorrow." Christopher Marlowe closes the bedroom window and returns to Ben Jonson, who has somehow, incredibly, remained asleep this whole time. Shakespeare, battered and bruised from his fall, returns home, but he's ecstatic, and he needs to write the sonnet of his life to make sure Christopher Marlowe returns to him. Of course, his brain was whirring at 1,000 miles an hour. But he knew when he invited Christopher Marlowe to the graveyard that he could write about tombs and death, and there's nothing sexier than death, thought Shakespeare. So he spent the night frantically writing and rewriting Sonnet 81. Just when he thought he'd finished, he'd have another idea, and he'd scrap the whole sonnet and start again. Eventually, the next evening came round, and Shakespeare had hardly had any sleep. He was absolutely knackered. He walked slowly, ponderously, to the graveyard, the London graveyard, with his little lantern illuminating his way. He got right into the middle of the graveyard and waited. The clock, the London clock, turned midnight. And he waited. No one appeared. 5 past midnight. Still no one. At 10 past, Shakespeare thought, bloody hell, he's not turning up. This is just my luck. I think I've written the best bloody sonnet of my life, and he's not turning up. And then, out of the darkness, a lantern shined. And there before him was the beautiful Christopher Marlowe, glowing in the dim candlelight of his lantern. They embraced, and Shakespeare said, "Listen, I brought you here to talk about death." And Christopher Marlowe says, okay, And Shakespeare said, no, I mean, it's death, but it's quite sexy as well, and it's sort of just saying how amazing you are and stuff like that. But I've written quite an incredible sonnet, if I do say so myself, and I must read it to you in this setting. And Christopher Marlowe says, "Okay, Shakespeare, I'll hear your sonnet, and then I'll decide." So there's a lot riding on this sonnet, by the way. Shakespeare swallowed. Okay. He pulled out Sonnet 81 from his back pocket and read, Sonnet 81. Either I will live long enough to write your epitaph, or you will survive me when I'm a rotting old corpse in the ground. Death can't take away your memory, but every part of me will be forgotten. Your name will live on for eternity, but once I'm gone, I'll be dead to the world. I'll only be given a pathetic commoner's grave, but you will have a tomb where everyone can see it. Your monument will be my lovely poems, which will be read and talked about for generations to come, when everyone now is dead and gone. My writing is so powerful that you shall live on where life is most potent, in the mouths of men. So there we have it, Sonnet 81, done and dusted, as they say. And Shakespeare is in a graveyard with Christopher Marlowe. Can he win him over with this poem all about death and about how amazing his writing is? It does, on paper, seem unlikely, but we will find out next week what Christopher Marlowe thinks of this sonnet. Until then,